I want to welcome everybody to our call today. We're going to be talking to the CSR Ukraine team. My name is Chris Jarvis, and I'm thrilled to be having this conversation today with folks, some of whom I just realized Taras is in Kyiv right now. So you are getting the real deal conversation here. The point of this call is to talk about how corporate social responsibility should influence corporate decision-making during times of war. Now, I actually, we've touched on in my work this topic, but in a fairly distant way. But now, because of so much CSR community investment in Russia, and great organizations like Use Social in Moscow, did some work with them a couple of years ago, and the good work in Ukraine. Now it's like, it's just a weird situation. So I wanted to see if we could bring some folks who were facing the situation directly to talk to us, so we didn't have to go through a filter of CNN or Fox. We didn't have to go through the filter of TikTok or any of that kind of thing. We can talk directly to people either displaced by the issue or actually living in Kyiv right at the moment. So thank you for joining the call. If you're joining later on by listening to the recording, I hope this is helpful. Let me introduce myself. My name is Chris Jarvis. I'm with the RW Institute. And the focus of the Institute is to try and bring science or evidence-based practices research to this field of CSR, corporate social responsibility, even ESG, or corporate citizenship or community investment. And in doing so, dialogues like this come up every once in a while. Next week, we'll actually be talking about the S in ESG, because ESG does not mean what we all think it means. It is something different, and I think it's very nefarious. So we're going to figure out what that is, because I think we're all being duped a little bit in our industry, but that's my overreactive takeaway from that. But on this call, we're going to talk about CSR and what corporate social responsibility looks like in the context of war. So to do that, we're going to be speaking with these amazing folks, two of these amazing folks today. You can see them on the call, Maryna, sorry, I keep wanting to give you an extra syllable, Maryna, but it's Maryna and Taras. And if you want to join us and show solidarity with our colleagues in Ukraine right now, I would encourage you, if you can, to turn on your video and to open up your chat box. It's the bubble below. I used to have to explain all this. I do not have to explain it after 2 years of pandemic. The thought bubble, the little thought bubble below that says chat, if you open that up, let's get to know each other. Let's meet the Ukrainian folks. And there are a number of people from Ukrainian companies in Eastern Europe as well. So I would love to have your details in here as well. So this is our first test. Go to the chat box, open it up, put your name in. If you do calls with me, you know what I'm going to say. Put your name in, where you're calling in from, and could you put your LinkedIn connection in? So this is a little different. Usually I ask for company and role, but if you could put your LinkedIn connection, it gives us an opportunity to connect with each other and just show some solidarity and support with our brothers and sisters in Ukraine, if you don't mind. So go to the chat box, put in your name and your LinkedIn profile. And then afterwards, if you've got questions, contributions, or a different way of seeing it, I call it a contradiction. But if you've got something, we're going to be asking questions, but I would love to know what you think. And there's few of us enough on the call that we can pause and go back and forth a little bit if that's okay with everybody. And it's going to be because that's the way we're doing it. So here we go. I didn't know how to end that comment. So before we get Maryna up here and talking, I should just say, CSR Ukraine has been doing this for quite some time in the region. In 2011, Angela Parker, my partner, and I had a chance to go to Kyiv and do a presentation to some of the companies that she was working with. And right now, you can see the focus area, a strong emphasis on STEM and women in this space and field. That should sound very familiar to those of us working on the same topics for the same reasons in our part of the world. And so Maryna, you can tell us a little bit about that, a little bit about your emphasis. I know you've got some slides to share. Maybe you can introduce the team. And just for those of you who are joining right now, if you wouldn't mind turning on your video, that would be fantastic. And put your name and your LinkedIn URL in the chat box. Follow Ingrid's leadership. She's a great leader in this space for many reasons, not the least of which is she knows how to use the chat. So thanks, Ingrid. Awesome. Over to you, Maryna. Sorry, I have got it in my head that you are Marianne. So welcome. Thank you so much. I haven't stopped thinking about you and your team since this began.
Chris, thanks a lot, and good. I don't know what is the time now in Canada. It's early.
It's all over the place. It's morning where I am, and it's really morning for some people.
Okay, so good morning in Ukraine and Europe. It's good afternoon, and I'm very. I'm glad to be with you today, and thank you, Chris, for inviting me and to raise the issue about CSR and sustainability. Actually, I should say that all I know about corporate volunteering were given to me by Chris and Angela many years ago when you came to Kyiv. So it was a very lovely time, and thanks for this. Thanks for this connection which exists. And I would like, I'm here with two my colleagues. First is Taras Dirkach. He is Deputy Director of CSR Ukraine, and also he is a coordinator of Career Hub. Taras, perhaps you can tell some words about you.
Hi everyone. I'm glad to be here too. I coordinate the great platform on career development of young people. We create CSR projects with companies, create national changes, and hope that these changes may affect young people all over Ukraine, and now Ukrainians abroad too. So maybe today we will share some experience from this point too, and maybe I have more communication with HR managers, with employers, so I understand what their reaction on this situation may be and on the war. So thank you, and back to you.
Okay, and also Olena. Lena, could you switch on your camera and be with us? Okay, and Alena is also, she is from Ukraine now. She is from Chernihiv region. Yesterday, Chernihiv region was under attack. It was a bit far from them, but it was in Priluki, and Alena is our SMM manager. Alena, just say hi.
Yeah, hello, nice to meet you. And I wish that our meeting today will be great, and we do some great work together, and spoken about war in Ukraine. It's necessary for us.
And thanks, Lena. And actually, I should say that in the first months of the war, we prepared a catalog of best practices, what our companies what were their response. And Alena collected all the information under attack, because she was in Sumy Oblast, and Sumy Oblast was invaded. And she said that refocusing on catalog was a kind of saving for her, and she could refocus her brain and thought about something positive. Lena, and I'm really very grateful for your work and really appreciate what you did. And I think that, I hope that our conversation will be very honest, and I'm really very interested in your opinion, because in my view, war in Ukraine showed that sustainability should be changed, that the war, even not war in Ukraine, it's war against Ukraine. It's not just war in the country, no, it's the war when one country invaded another one, and I think it's insane, but that's what we see now. And I think that this war was a kind of test for sustainability and for all sustainability declarations companies made. I would like to show you, first of all, Ukrainian prospect, what we see, what is with sustainability. And I also would like to thank to our CSR community in Ukraine, because they helped in creating the document from which I took some things. So now I will open my presentation. And actually, I should say that this is 111th day of the war. I still remember the morning of 24th of February when I woke up from the bomb explosions, which were just 3 kilometers from my house. And it was at 5 a.m. And since that, for 2 months, I always was waking up in this hour. And then I opened internet and I saw that Putin waged the war against Ukraine. In 1 month, I couldn't imagine how long it would be. And now it's more than 3 months, and still we do not see any prospects of hope, because Russia wants to invade Ukraine. And I should say that this is not just the war of Putin, it's a war of Russia against Ukraine. And I also think that it's very important to understand this, because when many companies said me that, sorry, we can't leave Russia because Russian people are so nice, it's Putin's war. It's not true. It's war of Russians against Ukrainians. And all atrocities we saw in Bucha and Irpin just prove this. And not Putin kills our people, it's Russian soldiers and also their families who. And this is just of one city, it's Mariupol, and actually there is no Mariupol anymore. It's constant bomb shelling for more than 2 months. And also another fact, that this war started not on 24th of February. This war started 8 years ago, when Russia annexed Crimea and occupied Eastern Ukraine. And this is my motherland. I'm from Eastern Ukraine. I'm from occupied part of Ukraine, Luhansk region. And that time, 8 years ago, Mariupol was liberated. So it was a kind of revenge to them. And you see that now we do not have Mariupol anymore. And we do not know how many civilians were killed there, because it's still, we can't get there because it's under occupation now. And now with this new new episode of war, 20% of Ukrainian territories are occupied. And you can see that now they can go to Crimea on the land. And perhaps it was the idea, what they wanted to achieve in the war of this year. But also, if to compare, you can see France, what would happen if 20% of France would occupy, or United Kingdom, or United States. If now when we hear some suggestions to help save Putin's face, for me and for many Ukrainians, it seems quite ridiculous, because it's 20% of territories of Ukraine, and there are a lot of Ukrainians and even Russian-speaking people who want to be under Ukraine, who want to live in Ukraine, but not in Russia. This is very good website which is called Russia Will Pay by Kiev School of Economics, and they update every month, every week, losses of Ukrainians' economy and for what Russia should pay. And you could see now how many residential buildings, roads, railway stations, cars, or cultural facilities or hospitals were destroyed. Even today we had air raids, we had attacks on, I think, 3 or 4 regions in Ukraine. It was also in Western Ukraine, which is considered more or less safe. So this is the, let's say, face of war. This is the figures of war. And you see that we need now more than $600 billion to restore Ukraine as a country. In terms of sustainability on Ukraine, okay, just imagine that you are a company and or you are head of the company or sustainability manager of a company, and you woke up from bomb explosions, and what should you do? And sure, at that time there was not ready to do actions, ready to do solutions, because we haven't experienced this. And we actually, I should say that we didn't believe that Putin would dare to launch this war. And there were some predictions that there would be something at Eastern Ukraine, but nobody, I think not nobody, but not many people believe that he would try to occupy Kiev. And that time, many projects have been stopped. Even in CSR Ukraine, 2 projects on $200,000 were stopped because donors decided to reorientate these to humanitarian issues, which were very highly needed. And all CSR budgets, sustainability budgets, were redirected at humanitarian causes. We also experience a huge rise in volunteering, and practically now many Ukrainians, they have 2 jobs. One is professional, and the second one is volunteering. Also, in terms of corporate governance, it's very strange to talk about corporate governance in this fragile state, and sure, it was just manual control of the situation. And many companies decided to boycott Russian goods. Also, we asked companies, are they going to produce sustainability reports? And practically all companies said that it's a kind of lost sense because it won't be a real one now. So perhaps they will transform these sustainability reports into the catalog of what companies has done during the war. What is about corporate volunteering? As I said, it's on rise, and but also companies now, they have some challenges. First of all, how to organize volunteering process, because it's a kind of chaotic, and you should understand why, because everybody has somebody to help, and that's why a lot of people try to help to the people, to relatives, to friends. And now, after 3 months, companies now will think how to make it just one channel, how to make it more strategic. Another one is how to balance work and life. And I should say that a lot of people now are overburdened. And that's why our companies, they have psychological lines, psychologists with whom many people can talk. And another one, it's even not psychological stress, it's psychological trauma, because if something happened to your relatives, to your family, and it's not psychologist, it's specialized, specialized expert should work. So it's another thing, and I think actually I should say that many Ukrainians are traumatized. That's what I think. Even sitting in Vienna, I'm in Vienna now, being in quite safe place, I should say that my heart and my soul are in Kiev. Actually, this is the public information. I took it from Facebook. It's Katerina. She is from L'Oreal, and from the first days of war, she was relocated, and she started to sew Ukrainian flags. And she sold it, and also people kind of donate, so they paid, and she could give them to military forces. So it's just what she did at her second job, and it's just one example. Many other people are doing the same. Somebody buy the weapons for the army, somebody buy trucks, or just deliver humanitarian assistance. So a lot of volunteering initiative, and a lot of NGOs appeared. Another challenge which our companies faced from the first days of the war was whether they should work with international NGOs or with local NGOs, because previously the companies had a kind of agreements with international ones, but you understand that international organizations are not very flexible. And if we are talking about the war, so it means that we need something here and now. And it's not the case for international organizations. So that's why companies had to restructure their process of procurement and of donations to work with local NGOs and foundations. And here they face absence of set process, some legal issues, and that's why they started to search for effective foundations. And here is just one foundation, Come Back Alive. This foundation was created 8 years ago, and they helped Ukrainian army at the East. And now it is one of the most popular foundation in Ukraine. As I told you about catalog, which Lena made, approximately 72 companies out of 300 sent donations to this foundation. And for me, it was very, very interesting to get to know that on the first day of the war, it collected 20 million UH. It is approximately, just one moment, it is approximately $700,000, and it was more than for 8 years of the war in Donbass. So just on one day. And I remember that on 23rd, just when I went to bed in this night, a terrible night, I also sent some amount of money to Come Alive, to support to support the army. So perhaps I had something like intuition, but it was the case. And now it's if you want to support Ukrainian army, you could help this foundation. Regarding corporate governance, because if you are talking about ESG, it was on the first day of the war, it was no strategic planning, no strategies didn't work, and everybody was under manual control in the time of the war, because companies should say that time they saved their employees, and it was really about rescuing employees, about evacuating their employees. This is from Forbes Ukraine, and its number of employees companies have, and how many of them are in the armed forces, and how many of them died or wounded. And you could see that, for example, Ukrzalyznytsia Railways company, they did a fantastic job. They provided a lot of evacuation trains, and there were thousands of people, for example, from Kharkiv, when the Kharkiv was bombarded, and practically all people who died, they were died at the workplace, because usually what Russia did, they attacked railway stations. Also Metinvest, a steel and mining group from the Mariupol, they can't now say about how many of their employees died or wounded, because they do not have any statistics yet from Mariupol. They do not have any information from their employees, and we have the cases when for 3 months there is no information about what happened to people. I hope that many of them are alive. Regarding ArcelorMittal, they are in Kryvyi Rih, and there are also some situation. And you see, for example, McDonald's and some international companies, and you see that they also suffered. I should say that also, you know, that, for example, French companies, some French companies continued to work in Russia, and we even had such strange case when, for example, employees of Ukraine, they asked their headquarters to leave Russia, and headquarters did not pleasant things to employees of Ukraine. Just they tried to separate them, to exclude them from general communication. And the case for Leroy Merlin, when the employee died under one of the attack, and it's so you can't believe that if a company works in Russia, its taxes help to kill employees in Ukraine, and this is I think the case which companies should think about. I just want to say that 3 days ago, I was on the plane with one guy. He was from very big company and international company based in EU, and he said that they wouldn't leave Russia because they invested $1 billion in Russia. And for me, here is the situation, and this is what I told, it's about the test. So this war is about test for sustainability, because for me, it's a kind of business as usual. And here I would like to show you the situation with Ukrainian companies. For example, you see that it's March, April, May, just 3 months of war. And in Ukraine, we have such a sentence, for example, that there are 4 seasons: winter, war, summer, and autumn, because we didn't notice spring. It was war. And you can see that work in full, more companies started working in full in April and May, I think, and Taras perhaps could support that. It's also the situation in the case about CSR Ukraine, because first month we were shocked, we were trying to find some safe place, etc. Also, you see that more companies work with some restrictions, and there is decreasing number of companies who do not work. So now in March it was 42% and now it's 17%. Regarding salaries, the situation is another one, because many companies in the beginning of war, they paid just in 2 months advance. And now only 23%, you see that this is decreasing number, pay the salary in full. And with continuation of the war, you can understand that the inflation is quite high. I also see high inflation in Europe, in US, I think in Canada the same, but in Ukraine it's really a very high devaluation of national currency. Also cut the salaries, 32% of companies cut the salaries, 11% do not pay, and 12% lay off the staff. For example, it's about legal companies, because they used to work with mergers, with acquisitions, with Ukrainian legislation, and now it's not the proper time for this. Also, if you look at about support and humanitarian aid, you see that in the beginning, more companies supported, and also it's what we see globally, that donations on the first months were quite high, but now donations are decreasing. And here it was just our talk with Chris before this webinar, that it's very important to continue provide some donations and humanitarian assistance, because the war doesn't go on vacations. We still pay very high price, and as our president said, that every day we lose 50 or 100 soldiers in the eastern Ukraine. And it's because there are a lot of Russian troops, and because Russia has been preparing for this war for more than 8 years, and we are a peaceful country, and we were not so preparing for this war with neighbor. Also, you see that companies support mobilized workers, and again, the number a bit decreased. Supply products to the army, provide services. In terms of financial resilience, you see that that not so many companies, they have these financial reserves for 1 month or for several months. So I think it's also very important. And you see that 29% of companies say that they have no financial reserves left, because the war, it's already 3 months of war. and it's about losses. It's the survey among small and medium enterprises, and practically 99% of economy of Ukraine is SMEs, and you see the war-induced losses, and they are quite high. Some companies have been relocated to Western Ukraine. They continue their production, but it also took time. So what is important? Important, I believe, and many Ukrainians believe, that it's important to boycott Russian market and goods. And I explain you why. Because the taxes you pay for, or people pay, they are just support this war, unfortunately. Again, what from the catalog from Ukrainian companies, 46 companies out of 300 stopped working in Russia. And for me, it was also surprisingly that many, it's practically 6% of Ukrainian companies worked in Russia during these 8 years of war. How to support sustainability? It was also very interesting, because now we are trying to develop the project to help sustainability managers. Because as I told you already, that sustainability managers, they do not have budgets now. And it means they do not have budgets for education, they do not have budgets for some kind of trainings, and they do not have budgets for some projects, because some of their projects have been stopped. So that's why we would like to suggest 2-week internship for a sustainability manager in the same sector abroad, to improve knowledge and practical skills in sustainability, ESG, or reporting. And it will be very nice, because these people, they could come back and deliver this good knowledge for rebuilding Ukraine. So I have already talked to some companies from UK, from Norway, and they said that it's doable, from Poland, and they said that it's doable. The only thing companies should do is to pay for coming, travel costs, and accommodation costs. And I think it could be done, and it is about support of sustainability managers. And also, I think it's very important to not to forget about global implications of this war. First, it's humanitarian. More than 12 million of Ukrainians left Ukraine. Left their places. Among them, 6 million left Ukraine, and I think now it's around 13, but now around 7 million are in Western Ukraine. 13 million needs humanitarian assistance. And again, economic challenge, because it's high inflation, food crisis. Ukraine used to export 4.5 million tons of agriculture product per month. And now our ports are blocked by Russia. Or grain is stolen by Russia. And also it's about energy crisis and security crisis. And I remember that many years ago, I thought that as a sustainability manager, I wouldn't like to work with defense, etc. But now we understand that this is a part of independence of the country, and it's a part of sustainability of the country, which that time was for me unacceptable. And that's why I would like to invite you to be with us on 21st and 22nd June. It will be 24-hour webathon and fundraiser to help rebuild civil society in Ukraine. We will talk about sustainability implications, and there will be voices from sustainability managers or sustainability heads of many other countries, from Brazil, from Japan, from Poland, etc. And also, Chris, it's interesting that it's also a Canadian company which supported GlobeScan, supported us in this. So thank you, Canada and Canadian people, for your support. And you can register, and I hope that it will be a very interesting discussion. Other initiatives which we are doing now, Taras has already mentioned some of them. It's about mentorship for Ukrainians abroad. We now launch the mentorship process for Ukrainians abroad, and if you are interested or your employees are interested, you could register to be mentors for Ukrainians, because when you are in an unknown country and you do not have any social contacts, it's very important to have mentor, to the person who could believe in you and provide a kind of access to networking. Also now we will start working on kids' room in co-working, and also if I know that many Ukrainians are going to Canada, and Canada now suggests quite good conditions. It's very important to think about some child-friendly spaces, because one of the key barriers for women to get employed is where to they can't how to say, they can't leave their children. So that's why these child-friendly spaces, which we would launch in Ukraine and hope in other countries could help them. And also, and I'm here very proud, it took us 3 months, but now we will be launching a very interesting project, Women in Tech. So for Ukrainians in the country and abroad, for women, for Ukrainian women, and they could launch their businesses, and we could help them, and perhaps it will give them some confidence and some money for living in the country. So it's our key initiatives now, and again, I would like to ask you to stand with Ukraine, to help Ukrainians, to join our sustainability marathon and support civil society in Ukraine, and also tell your colleagues about the war in Ukraine, because war in Ukraine is still here, and war doesn't go on holidays.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to walk us through all of that. That is a lot of information. This is recorded, so you can go back over it if you want for all of our attendees. But now we want to open it up. We've taken in lots of info, as I just said. We had some specific questions that Maryna went through and covered excellently. Thank you, Maryna, for that excellent presentation and for the time you took to prepare it for us. Could we just look at the chat box? And if you have a question, go ahead and type it in there so we don't miss it. But if you're on video, and it's just Ingrid and Jerome on video who are attending, you can raise your hands and we can call on you. But if you join video, we can do it that way. You can just raise your hand and we can get some questions going. So as we think about this and the role of CSR in the context of war, I'd love to know from people who are listening in to all of the information that Maryna was sharing with us. What's your question about your CSR program at your company, in your part of the world where you live, in Ukraine? Have you thought about doing anything? Is there some bit of information that you need to know? Do you know where to get started? Is this a priority for your company? Does your company talk about it? I was at an event a couple of weeks ago. It was a big event, and there were no official sessions, nothing on it. Now in St. Gallen, and that was all CSR people. So in St. Gallen, though, they rushed like crazy. They have 1,000 some odd people from around the world. It's St. Gallen Symposium. It's a pretty high level event, but they had to switch it and talk about sustainability and war. And what's the role of security? Maryna, while we're waiting for people to ask questions in the chat, let's start with this one. You said at the time it was unacceptable to consider security issues as part of maybe corporate social responsibility or sustainability. That was like, you know what? And if you remember, Maryna, when you and I were working with Impact 2030, because of the work with the UN, we wouldn't work with companies that had any part in producing landmines, munitions, even aircraft or other war staples. We were like, that is not the future of the species. And I agree that it's not. And yet, without those companies producing those items, Ukraine would be part of Russia today. So that's been my biggest thing too, is how do I get my head around this? How do you think Ukraine will think about security issues and those and munitions, let's say, and corporate social responsibility? Is it always going to be something else, but now we need to pay attention to it, and it's not a bad thing, it's just a necessary bad thing? Or how do you think it'll go forward after the war is resolved? And let's hope that it resolves in a way that is positive for Ukraine.
I completely agree with you, because that time it was unacceptable. And I remember even a good colleague of mine worked in sustainability, and then he became a CEO of military company. And I thought, how could he be?
Yeah.
But now, now you see how everything has been changed. And you can see in the budgets of many countries which started to invest more money in defense sector. And that's why it's interesting question, because I'm a kind of peaceful person, but the people should protect themselves. And that's why country, Ukraine, needs ammunition, needs weapons now. And that's why defense sector is very important. And the only thing which is very necessary is to understand that these things are used for protection, but not for attacks.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like any other tool humans use, I suppose. Which takes us to the ESG conversation next week. But thank you. It's insightful. I was wondering if anybody else wants to add to that question at all. No? Okay, that's good. If you do, write it in the chat box. Can you tell us a little bit about Come Back Alive, that program that you told us about, that organization you told us about? Because I'm curious, what is the work that the foundation is doing? Are they, because it looked like the basic human need was people need money to buy groceries so they can stay alive. But like, if they're not working, if their job has gone away, if their company has been destroyed, what is that Come Back Alive? What are they doing, and how can we get involved if possible?
Look, if you go on their page, you would read that this is the foundation which provides competent support to the army. And actually, it's very interesting because, yeah, Ingrid, I understand, but it's interesting that many experts, they said that Ukraine was able to resist Russia in the first days of the war, because we have a very interesting scheme of volunteering and support to army. So if, for example, you could look Russia, everything is centralized. So everything should be channeled through the top to the bottom, to the soldiers on the fields. In Ukraine, each division could approach this foundation, Come Back Alive, and said that they do not have this, this, and this. And Come Back Alive could provide the help they needed directly. So not to the top, because when you provide something to the top, it will take time when it will get to the field. So that's why in Ukraine, all this supply chain with ammunition and with weapons were decentralized. And it helped our divisions be more flexible and more operational, let's say. And Come Back Alive provide fantastic and competent support. They know how to choose the best things in terms of military in military terms, and they give it to the divisions which are asked about this. And they're quite transparent, and they are very reputational. So Ingrid, perhaps you can't support them as a company, but if you would like to support as a person.
Yeah. And so is there anything right now along those lines where we can, is there anybody giving money? Like, how are people staying alive? I guess that's what I'm wondering. Like, let's say my building got blown up, my company went out of business, there's 1,000 of us. I didn't join the military. I moved to Eastern Ukraine. How am I buying groceries right now? How am I feeding my family?
Okay, so how to help them, you mean?
Yeah, if I were in Eastern Ukraine, I have no job, I have a family, how am I paying for goods?
Okay, if the person is on the occupied territory,
yeah,
it will be very difficult to help these people. That's why.
Sorry, I meant Western Ukraine. I understand Eastern Ukraine is a whole thing. I apologize, Western Ukraine.
No, but it's very good, Chris, but it's very good question, because we had some debates. For example, I'm a board member of one foundation, and we had a very good, not good, but we have a big discussion on this. Should we support the people there? Yes, we should, but how? We do not have any legitimate tools to support. And that's why if you send them money, we do not know who will take this money. So that's why, unfortunately, if the person is on occupied territories, unfortunately, this person is very difficult to help.
Right.
And that's why our military administrations, they asked people when they understood that, for example, Russian army is approaching, that please leave this,
right.
Go to safer place. So this is the first thing. If you are, for example, in Western Ukraine, so that you have some options. First of all, there are humanitarian centers, but again, what we saw that now less and less donations, less and less humanitarian assistance came, because it's third, even fourth month of the war. So that's why. But anyway, we have humanitarian centers. Also only now, big international organizations started to provide support individually to refugees. So and they established a kind of working group on cash support, and now they made a kind of division to who will help. So if a person is a refugee, he could receive approximately around $100 per month per person.
Okay.
Also there is support from the government, and the government also provides support to those whose houses are destroyed in liberated areas. But again, it will take time.
So there is some support if you've lost your property, if you've lost your home, if you've been displaced. There's international support coming through, and then there's government support. Obviously, they're being supported internationally as well.
Yes,
I was just curious.
Chris, I also would like to say that if a person is running from some battles, he or she doesn't have anything.
Yeah.
So he needs a lot.
Yep. Okay. And you said that this is kind of what the focus is right now for CSR report. Designing the assistance policies for employees, which you just talked about. Evacuating, of course, nothing we can do there. Legal work in EU countries, that's interesting. Financial issues, we talked a little bit about that. Can't talk about a conscription necessarily. Psychological support, which is interesting because there's been some discussion on this side of the water around diversity, equity, inclusion, that if we're actually talking about creating more equitable workspace, we need to own not just the physical appearance of institutional or systemic racism, microaggressions, how you treat people, policies, diversity, visible diversity, but also the psychological baggage that people come with having lived with that kind of trauma. Now, it's a different kind of trauma. It's 400 years. It's generational. It's quite institutionalized here. But in your situation, I definitely can see companies not only dealing with the physical effects of the war, but actually having spaces where employees can, even at work or through work, deal with the post-traumatic stress disorder and other traumatic issues. That sounds like it's going to be a part of things moving forward for you.
Yes, exactly. And I should say that here COVID-19 helped us a lot. And also COVID-19 helped a lot for our company to give a quick response to the first days of war.
Yeah.
Because I spoke to several experts and they say that Ukrainian companies really were quick. And when we tried to ask CEOs or managers of the companies, they said because of COVID-19, they had contingency plan which worked.
Okay. I know we're getting a little quick here. I keep checking the chat box to see if there are questions, but it seems like we're good. One last thing, let's end with this. You mentioned there were 3 kind of ideas here. I really like the idea of the 2-week stint. And Ingrid, this is going to involve you. I'm going to ask a question on live here on the air. And it was around a fund for the CSR Ukraine team to offset their operational or living costs, whatever that group needs. It's a nonprofit. I don't know if you have anything set up or if you have something, but if you do, could you drop a little info in there and maybe speak to that, Ingrid?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have the Ukraine Crisis Relief Fund on Global Giving that has raised about 47 million. That does not include, that does not include the projects themselves that have raised their own money. So like Tabletotchki charity and things like that have also raised. Global Giving has about 85 grantees so far. But we are always looking for new nonprofit partners. So happy to connect you with our disaster team.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I don't know if you're set up properly for CSR Ukraine to be the recipient of it, to just cover their basic, like if it was unallocated or unrestricted, if you could give it to that organization, that's something we can figure out maybe later. But for everybody on the call, if you have a matching program, your company matches, you give 1,000, they'll match it for 1,000. Gates Foundation would be 2,000 in the match. Global Giving set up to receive that matching. Could you give us, can you drop a URL in for us to just save everybody on the call?
Yeah, it's right in the chat there.
Is it already? Okay, excellent.
Yeah,
excellent.
And feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and I can connect you with our disaster team. If CSR Ukraine is registered in Ukraine as a nonprofit, you can get through our due diligence and then be eligible to receive funds. And we do practice trust-based philanthropy during crises. So that's not a problem.
That's awesome. For anybody who doesn't know, you can go back to the Listen Up show, March 6th. You'll hear John Brothers talk about trust-based philanthropy. If you're doing it any other way, you're doing it wrong. And Ingrid, great to hear that as well, especially during crisis. If you want to make a contribution to this, I certainly do. I was trying to raise $10,000. People gave about $208 just as donations, even for the webinar. I really appreciate that. But we can do a match through our employer. But Ingrid, I would love to set up something where I know that this is going to benefit CSR Ukraine directly. So we'll send this in the follow-up. Julie's on the call. We'll make sure we send that in the follow-up. In the meantime, with only a couple minutes left, Maryna, I'm going to ask you specifically, is there anything we can do or our companies can do if they're in Europe for the 2-week program? And how do we learn more about that to level up? Because these are individuals who I assume there's not a lot of other work. So they have some time on their hand. They could invest it in their own development. That's really cool. But also, how can we get some of our folks to mentor women in technology during this downtime? Other things like that. Maybe we can send a follow-up for that as well. What do you thought? What are you thinking, Maryna?
Yeah, it will be great. So I could send you just short things how you can join and or some
That's great.
concept. And I think it will be very, very good. And perhaps Chris, because I'm here with Taras and I invited him because he also could say some words from him. What perhaps Taras, your key lessons from.
Yeah. That's great. Good call. Taras is in Kyiv, and I asked him before everybody got on the call, what's it like to get up in the morning and wonder if a cruise missile is going to hit your part of town? I've never in my life asked myself that question. You know what kind of privilege that is to never have to ask that question? Most people on the planet, I'm going to say most, don't get that. They have to ask that question or a question like it. Taras, tell us a little bit about your experience.
For me, it was a big surprise, and for my family too. And I think, Maryna used to said it on her on her speech someday, and it's like some common thing for Eastern European people that our grandmothers or grandfathers used to wish us peaceful sky for your birthday, like something like that. So have a peaceful sky, and we just like why we need it, and now we just understand what does it mean, and it's terrible why it is important, in 21st century when you just think about. I mean, for me as a young person and with these people I mean, I'm almost 30, but I communicate with a lot of young people that speak about different. I couldn't say like modern things, and they are interested in sustainability. They sorting their garbage. They think about how to operate with different like charity organizations. They volunteer in even before the war. They were like really into some sustainability, and they were interested in it. And we had SDG ambassadors program and engaging young leaders to promote SDGs, and they showed great results. They created projects. They were like about and now we are facing the problems of the Middle Ages, like battling on the territories or something like that, and it's really bad. I may also add to Maryna what she said about employers and that employees that actually lost their jobs. It was like over 60. I could say about young people, it's over 60% of young people that has job before the war, they lost their jobs, and some of them, like 20%, they had like distant jobs, so they didn't need to be on the workplace, so they saved their work, their jobs, but at the same time, from what support you asked, what support they provide, they like have from companies or government. It's also, we have some governmental program that give money to the business that employ IDPs, so internal refugees. So companies could afford to take additional person to the team to work with on some business or open a business or something like that. So it's also important that this support is there, but it's much more important for employers to be sustainable, to understand that they could handle to save money for the next months, and it was a challenge on the beginning, because you can think about sustainability or like in the meaning of like saving some like saving company, like sustainability in the meaning that you think that your employees like should go for for a temporal vacation or something like that, but it is not like ethical for the families. So you should like go and grab your like assets and give them to just to save their lives and save their families. So it was quite kind of a challenge, and I think it is important to think on how to balance these things when you have, you know, issues that are like pressing, and you couldn't you have to think on this level. At the same time, you are just speaking about something that you have to plan in this in these circumstances. You have to plan, and you have to think about like next investment, or
Right.
what you will
Where
do
it's
in
gonna
the
go.
next step. Yeah.
So I thank you so much for that, Taras. I'm sure we could get a lot more really great info from you. Again, I encourage everybody on the call to connect with Taras and Maryna and Lena. Thank you for joining, Lena. I know we didn't get to hear from you directly, but I really appreciate the work you're doing. And just to underscore the point that you were making, Taras, we were all looking, and with this, we'll just wrap up the call because we're at time here, but we were all focused on things like SDG 16, peace, promoting peace around the world, inclusive, and out of nowhere, this just as you said, Taras, that was the emphasis, and so we were not ready for how to support displacement by war, and yet it is a huge part of the human experience around the world, and maybe we need to consider, as the private sector, more of how to do that. And how to stop it in the future if at all possible. So I encourage everybody to join up for this 24-hour marathon, find out more information. We will send follow-up information to everybody following the call today. We are at 1 minute over, so I'm going to end really quickly here. Again, Maryna, Taras, Lena, thank you for joining. Thank you everybody else for joining on this call and for making contributions. We're going to be able to do more of it, and there's more to come on this. We'll have some good follow-up and some good actions. Thank you, everyone. We're thinking of you every day. CSR Ukraine, keep going. All right.
Thank you for arranging this, and thank you for your time and patience. Please
Cheers.
stand with Ukraine. It's important.
Absolutely. 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 Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Cheers.